was one of the first things Jackie Robinson noticed when he walked into Ricky's office that first time. Television has been noted as the key factor in the success of Jackie Robinson. According to Dr. George N. Gordon, prizefighter Jack Johnson was edited by photographs, Joe Louis was filtered by radio, but the unblink of an eye humanized Robinson. He was not a stereotype, he was an equal with all the other players on the field. It was a lesson taught by example, similar to Ed Sullivan kissing Pearl Bailey on television. You couldn't deny his blackness. It was a visible, sustaining show day after day. Television magnified the social event and made it reflective and directive. Ricky knew he needed the team owner's approval to bring Robinson up to Brooklyn, but he wanted to make sure he had the commissioner's approval first. So he had a private meeting with Commissioner of Major League Baseball, Happy Chandler, a native Kentucky. Chandler could overrule the team owners if they voted against integration. The conversation between Ricky and Chandler went like this. Ricky said, "I cannot go ahead in the face of that vote. I cannot do it unless I'm assured of your support." Chandler asked, "Can this man play?" Ricky said, "He could make the major leagues today." Chandler then said, "The only reason he's being kept out is because he's black." Chandler continued, "Let's bring him in like just any other player, and I'll keep an eye on him." This is all that it took for Happy Chandler to push the owners aside after they voted 15-1 against integration in the summer of 1946. Chandler let Branch Rickey bring up Jackie Robinson to the Dodgers on April 15, 1947. This was the beginning of the integration of baseball. Stewardship. Branch Rickey looked after all of his players from his early days as a college baseball and football coach to his retirement in baseball in 1955. He was concerned for the welfare of all the players and their families. For instance, in 1948, Roy Campanella was sent down to the minors for a short time to play for the St. Paul Saints. While his wife Ruth just gave birth, only 3 days later was Roy called back to Brooklyn. He expressed to his manager, Walter Alston, that he wasn't sure that his wife could travel and that he didn't want to leave her behind. Alston told Campanella he would talk to Mr. Rickey. Rickey advised Campanella to consult his doctor about moving his wife and baby. Everything worked out, and the doctor told Campanella that they were no danger to travel, and so off to Brooklyn they went. Commitment to growth of people. In Branch Rickey's mind, the integration of baseball was not only the right thing to do, it was long overdue. In 1883, 2 persons of color played baseball on all-white teams in the Northern League. John Bud Fowler, a pitcher-catcher and outfielder for Stillwater, Minnesota, and Moses Fleetwood Walker, a catcher for Toledo, Ohio. The following year, Toledo was absorbed into the American Association, which is part of today's major leagues. In 1884, Moses Fleetwood Walker played 42 games alongside his brother. Moses is considered the last African American to play Major League Baseball until Jackie Robinson. Hall of Famer Cap Anson of the Chicago White Stockings was an outspoken player-manager and racist who refused to let his team take the field if there was any people of color on the opposing team. There were 2 different incidences that Anson protested and refused to let his team take the field. On August 10, 1883, while Chicago White Stockings were playing Toledo in an exhibit game, the Walker brothers were scheduled to play, and on July 16, 1887, when Moses was playing for Newark alongside George Stoley, another African-American player who was scheduled to be the starting pitcher. Anson successfully stopped the men of color from playing partially because of a widely read and decisively racist article published in the Sporting News 3 days before the July 16th game. According to James A. Riley, that same day the International League directors met in secret and decided not to approve any other people of color to play in the future. The man responsible for banning blacks from playing in the International League was Cap Anson. The American Association and the National League soon followed suit, and by 1897, blacks were excluded from playing in all major and minor league teams. Though never formally a rule, the color line persisted in baseball for the next 50 years. Thus, it became an unwritten rule or the gentleman's agreement that no Negro player may play baseball on the professional level. Not another person of color played Major League Baseball until Jackie Robinson in 1947. However, one player bent the color line in 1916, Jimmy Claxton, a man of both African American and Native American heritage. Claxton played one game for the Oakland Oaks of the Pacific Coast League, but as soon as his true heritage was discovered, he was fired. It took another 30 years and two true servant leaders like Rickey and Robinson to break the color line officially and eliminating it forever. Branch Rickey and Jackie Robinson shared the monumental task of stamping out segregation in professional baseball, a move that is often noted as the start of the civil rights movement. Jackie Robinson became very outspoken and very active in the civil rights movement. Dr. Martin Luther King said that he was inspired by Jackie Robinson. King stated, "Jackie Robinson made it possible for me in the first place. Without him, I would never have been able to do what I did." There could not be two finer examples of servant leadership than Branch Rickey and Jackie Robinson. Now, thank you. I don't know how many of you had read Rickey and Robinson by Roger Kahn, but I'm halfway through the book, and I found something that I did not find in any other baseball book that I've read on the subject. What was interesting, on March 12, 1945, Governor Dewey of New York signed the Fair Employment Practice Act. And this act basically was an act that included, you couldn't discriminate against religion or race. So by law, Rickey had the law behind him. He was a lawyer, he knew this. And March 12, 1945 was before Rickey started his full run plan. And I thought that was very interesting. Of course, this particular law became federal, and of course it included sex. You couldn't discriminate. Any questions? Yes.
I read in Satchel Paige's biography that he felt that he should have been the first one to be put into baseball. He was a different personality than Jackie Robinson, and seriously, he was willing, he said, to take a cut in pay to play with the white players.
Jackie Robinson, we could all agree, was not the best Negro League player, but he had something that most of the other players didn't have. He was college educated, he was an officer in the Army, and he knew how to handle himself. And that, as he just said, that's some of the characteristics he was saying that they should be scouting for. That is what Rickey was looking for. He was not looking for the best player. He was looking for the best man who had the best character and who could handle the situation. If he would have fought back any of the verbal or physical abuse that he experienced, it would have failed. And he knew it. Rickey knew it. And so that's why Robinson was picked. But they went to Campanella first, and Ricky didn't care for Campanella.
Why didn't he care for Campanella?
He didn't have the type of personality and discipline. Yes.
Didn't he have some doubts about how old Campanella really was too? Because Campy had been already playing for at least a decade. Because he had been like 15 years old, but there were age issues with Satchel. There were potentially age issues with Campanella. At least with Jackie, he knew he had somebody who'd be able to last for more than a year or two.
Well, I think more importantly, it was the character of the man. Satchel Paige did not have the character he needed, and he didn't think Campanella had the disposition to handle it either. It was the high pressure that the first African American to break the color barrier was going to withstand. That's also why he asked Jackie if he had a girl. He needed someone to come, like it said, someone to come home to support him.
Couldn't that be said that he just needed to look a certain way for all the white fans to accept him? Like, you have a family, you have to act a certain way, and then
I think
accept it.
it was more that he was going to well, Robinson had a temper, and Ricky knew it. But he also knew that he was able to, if push came to shove, he would control his temper. That's what he really needed to guarantee at that first meeting, that he would control his temper. If he could control that temper, then he could withstand the pressure. That's what it was all about. It wasn't the best player, it was the best person.
To make him look good to white folks.
He was the black, he was very dark skinned.
Right.
He stuck out. It had nothing to do, it had to do with how he was going to handle himself and how he would withstand everything that was going to be thrown at him. And that is why Robinson was the one who was picked. Yes.
I'm assuming you saw the movie 42?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, what's your take on the portrayals of Robinson and Ricky in the movie?
I mean, I enjoyed the movie, and with all the movies, there's an element that is a little off the whole truth because it's Hollywood, but I thought it was good. It just, I haven't seen it recently so that I could tell you what I thought wasn't just right. I mean, I've gone to plays about the Robinson-Ricky story. I've seen all the movies. I own all the movies. I read as many books as possible, from starting with, the ones that, came out, in the 50s, late 40s, when even Jackie Robinson wrote something. I think there's always that element of entertainment. But, Branch Rickey was cheap. Everyone knew it. And he needed to find talent. He did not pay the Negro League's owners for their talent. He didn't think he had to. He thought that they were kind of shady. This is what I'm reading in Roger Kahn's book. These are Roger Kahn's words. And that he felt he shouldn't pay for them. My interpretation was, hey, he was cheap and he thought he could get away with it, so he didn't pay them. Other teams, when they were taking away players from the Negro League, some of them did get some financial compensation. But some of the players weren't even under contract for the teams that they were playing. So, we have less African American players today than ever before, and they're looking into it. Well, it's easier. I blame Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan is the one. Anyone can put a hoop up or shoot hoops, and you can do that with yourself. You don't even need other people to practice basketball. But you need a lot of people and a lot of land. Now, the White Sox, I think, are doing a better job than the Cubs, but the Cubs also invested in Little League. I'll tell you, the best thing for baseball was this last year's World Series. That got the major leagues even more committed, especially in the city of Chicago, when our teams were so bad that rooting for those Little Leaguers was the best baseball last summer. So, but, you know, I don't think there's enough being done to get kids excited, and personally, MLB is killing baseball for me. I can't afford to go to the games and sit where I want to sit. Now I do, because I buy the cheap seats and I have an usher that takes care of me in 2 different ballparks, one in Milwaukee and one in Chicago. But it's ridiculous, like you said. You take a family of 4. You can't. Most people can't do it. I'd rather see a live theatrical performance and spend more money on that, but I'm also a saint, which is an usher corps in Chicago, so I go to the theater free. But I watch it on television. Now, last season, I don't have cable. That's a conscious choice. When I was in grad school, most recently, we cut out the dish or the cable, so I only see a limited amount of games. Well, I'm a diehard Cub fan. That was a blessing this past summer that I was able to see a limited amount of games. But Major League Baseball is killing it. You know, they're killing themselves with their costs, and the players are multi-billionaires over pampered babies. And I'll pitch count. Let me just say one thing. Bob Feller, who I met only at a card show because I'm not old enough to see him pitch, but he pitched 9 innings. Plus, he pitched hay all winter. He worked on a farm. These guys aren't in condition. They lift weights, but they're not physically fit to endure a full game, or maybe their financial managers don't want them to.